Hello, my name is Bryce, and this is my history project, Richmond Fireside Chats. This is an addition of my history project, Richmond Encyclopedia. My name is Bryce Holt, and I will be the host of this show. What I hope to accomplish with this fireside chat is to be able to host interviews with Richmond's citizens, and even interviews with historians outside of Richmond or new historic individuals who have influenced Richmond's history. I am making this first episode as an introduction of myself and who I am, as there's many people who live here in the city that don't know who I am, and I am more than welcome to share that information. As I already stated, my name is Bryce Holt. Though the Holt family, spelled H-O-L-T, is not a well-known family here in Richmond, my maternal side of the family are the Funks, F-U-N-K. The Funk family settled here in Richmond in 1860, just the year after the city was founded in 1859. Along with the Funk family, I am a descendant of Apostle Mariner Wood Merrill and the stalwart example of priesthood and of grit, Stillman Pond. Though I am a descendant of these wonderful pioneers and settlers of my hometown, I did not grow up in a household that was centered in church or in Christianity or in the gospel. Nevertheless, in my early years, my parents did attend for us as a family to go to church. It wasn't until I was about 4 that my parents decided that they would step away from the church, and they took us kids with them. Nevertheless, that was their agency, and they chose to do that themselves. When I was 14, missionaries from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints showed the front door, and I answered the door. They asked if I would be interested in learning more about the church, and I said yes, I would love to learn more. I continued to be taught by the missionaries, and the day came that they asked me if I would be interested in baptism, and my parents gave me that choice, and I chose to be baptized on April 26, 2014, at the age of 14. Soon after my baptism, my missionaries introduced to me FamilySearch.org. This was a family history website, and after they showed me the website, I could not stop learning about my ancestors. I wanted to learn everything that I could about who they were. As I continued to learn about who my ancestors were and what they did for Richmond and for the community, I began to have a love and interest for the history of Richmond. When I was around 16, growing up to 18, I had a desire to do something history related to Richmond, but I didn't know what exactly. It wasn't until 6 months after I had finished my mission in Dallas, Texas, in August of 2021, while I was working in the family history library as a customer service intern, that I felt an inspiration to make a history website for Richmond. As an individual who is gospel-centered, I will testify now that I know that that was the Holy Spirit. After I started what was originally called Richmond's History. Soon after, I renamed it to Richmond's Encyclopedia, and it was created on August 5th of 2021. However, I didn't publish the website to the public until December of that year. I was afraid that people were going to hate it, actually. I was afraid that there were going to be people who thought that it was new or different, and that people were going to be offended by it. And so I waited, and I held back, trying to make sure that I could brace myself for people's reactions. Thankfully, the people's reactions were very, very nice, and I was so relieved. After I published the website under just my normal Facebook profile, I decided to make a Facebook page about the website Just simple Richmond's Encyclopedia is what it was. In February of 2024, I changed the name to Bryce's History Project, Richmond Encyclopedia. The reason for the name change is that individuals were contacting Richmond City and the local chapter of the Daughters of Utah Pioneers with concerns about my website, being confused that Richmond City was making the history website. So, in order to end the confusion, I renamed it to Bryce's History Project. I know that there's still some who get confused that it might be Bryce Wood, who currently sits on the city council. And though Bryce is an amazing man, this, with all due respect, is my history project. I have before me a series of questions that I assume that people might have about my history website and my process of what I do on the website. One question on here that I have written down is, how do you decide which people, events, or artifacts to write down? And what is my process when it comes to writing this history? So most of the information that I have on the website pertain to, I guess, the most historic events in Richmond's history, the pioneers of Richmond, our government leaders, historical figures, those who have served in wars, extraordinary women, historical events, artifacts, landmarks, and historical documents. The Pioneer page contains the histories of the first 10 years of Richmond's settlers. These are individuals who I've categorized as pioneers, and up until 1869, the Daughters of Utah Pioneers and even the Church of Jesus Christ categorized as pioneers. The reason that I go up to 1870 with this is because Richmond was incorporated as a city in 1868. So the first census that was recorded of Richmond City was 1870. In order to have an accurate list of names on the website and to also record those first families that lived here in Richmond, I go all the way up to the recording of our first pioneers to 1870. I know that some find that a little upsetting. I've been reached out by some members of the Stoddard family and members of the Tripp family and members of the Spackman families who are a little upset or disappointed that I only go up to 1870. The reason that I also only go up to 1870 is because, fun fact, in 1870 up until 1900, Richmond was the second most populated city in Cache Valley. There were, up until 1960, over 1,000 people living here in Richmond. And in 1880, there were 1,198, and in 1890, 1,232. I pride myself that I have so much information on my website out already. As of this year of 2025, on August 5th, there's 2,700 pages worth of information. But if I were to put everybody that ever lived in Richmond on the website, I wouldn't be able to have the time to work on anything else. Besides that, it would be an humongous chance of time to take. It's already taken me nearly 4 years to finish 2/3 of Richmond's pioneer history. And it will probably be the 4-year anniversary or very close to it that I will finish the pioneer subpage between 1860 and 1870. There's just so much information. Understand that though I would love to put more people, more families, more pioneers onto the website, there's just not that much of a chance at this moment to be able to do that. I'm a one-man team. I do this all by myself. This is my hobby. This is my passion project. I know many people find this to be a way for them to learn about their city. And I've already met a bunch of people who have learned about their city with this website. And I am honored that they use my website to learn. But being the only person that works on this project, I need to pace myself. I do not get paid for this. I have never made a cent, a dollar, or a dime from my work. And I don't want to, because if it's about the money, I fear that I won't have the passion for it other than I have to do it because I have to make money. And I don't want that. I want to do this because I love it. And I do love it. I love this so much, but I can only do it for 2 to 3 hours a day. About 10 to 15 hours a week is how much I spend time on this project. Probably the page that has the most information, other than the Pioneers page, is the Artifacts page that has histories of businesses, buildings, and organizations. One of which is that I just found recently is the Daughters of Utah Pioneers here in Richmond. I've recently been doing some research about the Daughters of Utah Pioneers here in Richmond, which their names are the James and Drusilla Hendricks Camp. They were founded in 1907. And so far that I could find, not only are they the oldest DUP camp here in Cache Valley, they are the longest running nonprofit historic preservation committee in Cache Valley and possibly northern Utah, at least north of Ogden. Since researching the history of my hometown, I've learned quite a bit, especially about those who have been hidden in Richmond's history, those who have been forgotten, at least forgotten in their city's history and not their family's history. I pride myself that I started this work as a genealogist, and I still describe myself as a genealogist. I have written quite a bit of history of the Funk family. But since doing this work, I have found many people who have been forgotten and whose histories have not been recorded. One example that I find to be very interesting is the history of one of Richmond's only Civil War veterans, Luther Burnham, who, as I stated before, he's a Civil War veteran and a founder of a community in New Mexico. Another that I find super interesting that I've been able to do the history of are two individuals who have actually worked on Capitol Hill. Hiram Enos Crockett, who served as Secretary of State for Utah, and Charles Henry Skidmore, who is Utah's Superintendent of Education, along with the notable and yet forgotten United States Brigadier General during World War II, Charles Harrison McNutt. I find it a great pleasure to be able to record the history of these wonderful men and women who have blessed this wonderful community. One of the pages that I really pride myself on is the Extraordinary Women's page. This page is a nice spotlight for the sisters who have shaped this community and who are just wonderful examples to learn about. There's about 40 different histories in the Extraordinary Women's page that you can read and learn and can just feel the examples of these strong, independent women rubbing off on you, thinking to yourself, if they can do it, then so can I. It's one of my favorite pages that I've created on this website. As I stated before, my website was made by inspiration, and I still use the inspiration from the Lord to work on my website. And because of this, I get to find a lot of information that I would not have been able to find without the help of the Lord. At times, I feel that I should work on the website, but I don't know what exactly to work on. So I will just get on my computer and just start looking around on the website. And at times, I will stumble upon a different website that exists or a book that exists that contains new information that has never been recorded that I can put onto the website. Most of the information on the website is sourced from FamilySearch.org. There are about 330 citations just from Family Search alone. Family Search has helped this recording so much. Genealogists who spend hours researching their family's history and recording it and uploading it to FamilySearch.org are the main reason why this website works so well. I tip my hat off to them and thank them for their hard work and determination. At times, there are buildings that exist in Richmond that nobody has the histories about until I stumble upon it on Family Search. For example, there is a house across the street from the Richmond Stake Center on Main Street that is abandoned. It's a gray-blue house. Currently, they're doing some what looks like sidewalk or shoulder road work directly in front of it on Main Street and First West. And nobody knew the history of that home. That home is the home of Almira Davenport, who was the third wife of William Doris Hendricks. Common for the practice of polygamy in those days, the husbands would build individual houses for each of their wives and their children. That home was the home for Almira and her children. That information was lost, and nobody knew where that information went until I found it on FamilySearch.org and was able to make a page on it on my website that I've labeled as the Davenport-Hendricks home. On my list of questions, I have a question that says, how do you hope people use the Richmond Encyclopedia? I would hope that anybody who goes onto the website really takes their time on the website. There's a lot of information on there, more information than that has ever existed previously about Richmond. And it's not just about a broad history of Richmond. If you want broad histories of Richmond, you can go to the historic events page. You can get, for the most part, very broad histories. But if you want to the specifics, then you need to find names. You need to read about those people. The Pioneer page has around 500 histories alone. The Artifacts page has the histories of nearly 150 businesses and the histories of over 75 historic buildings here in Richmond and Cove. There is so much information that I could proudly say that it is the second largest encyclopedia in the state of Utah. Please, just take 5-10 minutes of your time in the day and just go down a rabbit hole. Just start reading, clicking links that take you to different parts of the website and just read. Maybe there's a specific business that you didn't know the history of. Research it. Search it up. Take some time to just learn about your city. I could promise you that you can learn a lot about this wonderful community that we call Richmond and Cove. I'm happy to be able to provide this for my communities. I'm happy to be able to meet some people who have been influenced by my work. In one case, it actually happened outside of Richmond. An individual who is a descendant of the Kerr family reached out to me asking some questions and asked if they could come to the Daughters of Utah Pioneer Relic Hall to take a look at some information that we might have about the Kerr family. She had seen my work on Facebook and was wondering about a time that we could set up. This woman didn't live in Richmond. She didn't live in Cache Valley. She didn't even live in Utah or Idaho, for that matter. She didn't even live on the western side of the United States. She lived in Buffalo, New York. An individual who hadn't been to Richmond hardly ever in her life, who was a descendant of the Kerr pioneer family, was able to find my work and was able to be taught about the history of their family in Richmond. People ask me, why do I do this? And the best response that I can say to that is, why not? This is something that I truly love to do. This is something that I find joy in, not only as a community project for myself, but as a way to help others in my hometown and those who have family who used to call this their hometown. there are plenty of individuals who do live in the state of Utah or the surrounding states, Wyoming, Idaho, Colorado, who tell me that they love the work that I do on Facebook because it reminds them of home, and Richmond is their home. Some individuals have asked me if I would be interested in turning my website into a book, and I've thought about it. It's a ongoing thought to do that. The only problem is once a history book is printed, it goes out of date. That's the thing about time. It's constantly moving. It's constantly going forward. History is a record of the past. And the only way to be able to update that document of history is to make new pages. And that can get pretty difficult pretty quickly. But with a history website, you don't need to do that. You can record some information and publish it on a website the following day, and voila, the information is updated. There is, if I were to make it into a physical edition, the only spots or places that I would make that information would be guaranteed the Pioneer page, because the Pioneers are not a present, ongoing event. The Pioneers are past. So I could make a book, an encyclopedia of the Pioneers of Richmond. I could also do it for the veterans of Richmond up until about World War I, and then give it a few, maybe a decade or two, and then start adding the veterans of World War II on it as a book, as there are still living veterans of Richmond's World War II experience, and those who live outside of Richmond who potentially could get buried here in Richmond, and then their information would have to be added. So definitely could write a book about the veterans up until World War I, and given about a decade and a half, maybe two, just to be safe, definitely could add it with the veterans of World War II. As I stated when I started this, I said that this would be a way to interview individuals in Richmond. I hope to start off with the interviews, to interview the candidates of the 2025 election. There are a lot, and I hope to be able to use this and then make some news articles and publish those outside. Maybe try to see if I can get in contact with Cache Valley Daily and the Herald Journal, and hopefully they would be interested in also co-publishing some articles about those who are going for our election. We deserve to know their thoughts and their feelings and how they would fit in the city council and leading our community. So I hope to be able to provide for those who want to learn about who is running for these elections. In the future, I will also interview individuals who were historic in Richmond's history. I hope to be able to interview former mayors of Richmond. I hope to interview former stake presidents of the Richmond, Utah stake, former bishops, if possible, and even historic family historians. I know that there are some who are experts as genealogists that could tell a wonderful history about their father or grandfather and their life and experience here in Richmond. But definitely, I also want to interview, with their permission, the veterans who have served this community. These interviews will not be lost. A digital copy will be made, and a transcript of these interviews will also be made. A copy of the digital interview and a copy of the physical transcript will be given to the individual whom I interviewed, or to a group if there is a group of individuals. And another copy will be given to Utah State Merrill and Kazir Library so that those histories and those interviews can be preserved for many more years, so that in 50, 60, 70 years, if I'm gone and can no longer do this, the next group of people who want to record their city's history can have those records available to them. A digital copy for if there's still a digital age in the future, and a physical copy. So if by unfortunate circumstances we no longer have digital options. I also plan to use this to interview business owners. There are plenty of wonderful business owners here in Richmond that people don't actually know about. So I hope that I can use this to be able to bring people's attention to the small businesses, or even, I guess, the smaller businesses of Richmond. There are small businesses of Richmond and there are big businesses of Richmond. But there's the small businesses of Richmond that people don't know about. And I would love to be able to share that using this podcast. Speaking of businesses, this podcast and all of these interviews will be non-sponsored. So if there is some business owner who is listening to this and wants to reach out about sponsoring this, I will decline. As I stated before, I don't do this for money. And I will definitely not do this because somebody wants their name slapped onto my work. Nevertheless, I would love to work with you about recording your history, but this is my work. And I will not let somebody put a bumper sticker on my history project of a Lamborghini. Or I guess a better way to describe it is probably a 1963 Chevy, but a nice one that I wouldn't put a sticker on. This has been a short interview, merely because I can't think of all that much that people might think about my history project. But after this is published, go ahead and reach out to me with any questions that you have. You can reach out to me via Facebook Messenger if you are on Facebook. If you don't already follow me on Facebook on Bryce's History Project Richmond Encyclopedia, please do so. You can also reach out to me via my email, bdholt, B as in Bryce, D as in dog, Holt, Holt, 1414. So bdholt14 at gmail.com. I am very responsive and would love to answer any other questions that you might have about me. This has been the first episode of the Richmond Fireside Chats. My name is Bryce Holt, and this is my history project.